Before I play you some of the sound bites, let me read you what at least one honest writer in The New Yorker said explicitly. All right, so they've already given up the game. Some lefties have already admitted, yes, we've been doing it. Here's the truth. Saying the evidence the plaintiffs had amassed that Harvard in particular discriminated against Asian applicants through a bizarre and unacceptable, quote, personal rating system is overwhelming. And indeed, that's true. I mean, the court laid it out in great detail how they'd been using personality scores to get rid of the Asians, to say in the same way they used to do with the Jews. This time it was they had too many Asians who were above the grade. They had to find some way of telling them they didn't qualify for admission. And they used their personalities to get rid of them. So, you know, if you'd replaced Asian with black, these same leftists who are now disputing that New Yorker piece would be outraged. But now, since it's Asian Americans who benefited and arguably blacks who didn't, they've got to push ridiculous narratives like this one from NPR. Listen to this, Mark.
There is no evidence that there's a practice of anti-Asian discrimination. Predominantly white conservative political forces are leveraging this experience of being racially marginalized among Asian Americans to say, yeah, and by the way, there's this policy that you're not benefiting from.
I feel like Asian Americans have been used.
The myth ignores the long legacies of systemic racism faced by Black Americans. It ignores selective recruiting of highly educated immigrants, and it enforces a false story about Asian Americans, who are not a monolith.
That is their latest position, that they were basically smart enough to get into Harvard, but too dumb to realize that they were just political pawns of the whites.
Yeah, I can't get over the naked racism, actually, about Asians here, because this whole personality thing is oh, yes, they're very brainy. They're awfully good at mathematics. If you hold a math contest, a train is approaching at 57 miles an hour and another one's coming towards it at 38 miles an hour. Boom, yeah, I got it. They're fabulous for that, but let's face it, they're totally boring. I mean, this is basically, I can't get over that. This is like the old racist gag from however many decades ago, you know, all Chinese look alike. All Chinese have the same boring personality, but you can...
It's amazing.
But they've gotten away with it. They've gotten away with it in the interests of this absurd, complex, progressive apartheid that's been erected in this country. And the NPR story is fascinating, where they say, oh, yeah, these Asians, they're all very brainy when it comes to these math questions at, the grade school math question. But they're actually patsies, they're rubes, they're dupes, which is why the knuckle-dragging white redneck is able to use them as a front for overturning affirmative action. I looked it up, actually. A professor at Duke University ran the numbers on how it would go if they had meritocratic admissions at Harvard. In other words, if they didn't grade you on your boring personality, 51.52% of the student body would be Asian and 36.54% would be white. That's how it would go on meritocratic admission. So this attempt from the rubble of the Supreme Court decision to reconstruct a coalition of the minorities, actually, you know, Asians on a meritocratic business, according to this study from Duke University, would have actually the majority of places at Harvard.
Right, of course. I mean, that there is something in the Asian culture which is to be admired that dedicates itself, that in which parents, rich and poor, are committed to education, to studying hard, to pushing academics. That's to be applauded. I mean, I've talked about this with Amy Chua many times, who wrote Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. She's the original Tiger Mom. About how she's committed to this. She teaches at Yale Law. So does her husband. She has two daughters who went, I think, to Harvard and Yale, and same with respect to their graduate studies. And I'm just not willing to push my kids that hard. You know, I have a different approach than she does. That's fine, right? That's fine. It leads to different results at the college level if they're not coming up with these false justifications, as you point out, that the Asians are boring and therefore can't get into Harvard. But now the line has to be, it can't be that the Asians actually were pissed off about this, Mark. It has to be the evil white man exploited them. Yet again, it's the whites' fault.
Yeah, the stupid white guys who would only make up 35% of the student body, nevertheless, are wily, cunning enough. This comes back to the the Asian personality defects are so bad that they don't even know moronic white men whose IQ is a fraction of theirs are pulling the wool over their eyes. The thing about this, I find it, my kids, who went to a little New Hampshire grade school where in each year, there were between like 9 and 17 students, not a lot of them. But all the kids throughout northern New Hampshire, whenever they took part in these, I think it's called mathletes, these math competitions, they'd all game it out beforehand, and they'd say, "Oh, wait a minute, we're playing some school down from southern New Hampshire, where it's some fancy town where all the rich parents have adopted Chinese babies, so they're going to win." And the whole thing was that, we've got no Chinese people, so we're screwed. The school down the road has got a kid whose mother is Asian, so they're going to do better than us. They made jokes when they're 7 years old. They're making jokes about this thing. And you notice it, I was walking down Wigmore Street in London a couple of months ago, and I suddenly noticed that on all the posters for the classical music recitals at the Wigmore Hall, everybody who's playing a cello now in any capital city around the world appears to be Asian, because, as you say, that's one of those disciplines that Asian parents value, teaching their kids to play chamber music, while we're teaching them that there are 57 genders or whatever it's up to now. Right. It's not hard to figure how it's going to go. You look at the international rank. There's a reason for this. And the racism here, the naked racism, which appears to say, oh, yes, these guys have fantastic big brains. Yes, they can play the cello brilliantly. Yes, they're multiplication skilled. But let's face it, they all bore the socks off us. They've got away with that for the entirety of the 21st century at American universities. And it's absurd that it takes, 9 judges on some court to tell them, actually, this is totally racist and you shouldn't be doing it.
In a somewhat startling description, the UN food chief warned the world with the words, knocking on famine's door. What? He called what we're facing a perfect storm of a perfect storm. And he's not alone in that view. A Barron's report says a food shortage could be coming even in the U.S. Farmers see it too. John Boyd Jr. is a 4th-generation farmer. He recently said we're going to see empty food shelves in the coming months. That's why getting survival food is more important than ever. Create your own stockpile of the best-selling 4 Patriots survival food kits. It's not ordinary food. We're talking good for 25 years, super survival food. Hand-packed in a family-owned facility in the USA and giving jobs to over 200 Americans. They have different delicious breakfasts, lunches, dinners, and you can make these meals in just less than 20 minutes. You just add boiling water, simmer, and then you serve. And right now, for the next few days, viewers will get 10% off their first order by visiting 4, the numeral 4, patriots.com, and you use code MK to get the discount. Go to 4patriots.com. Use the code MK to start your own stockpile today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.